Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as usual, the Prime Minister could not help himself. So he starts with his plea for statesmanship and he enters into the political domain and saying things that he knows are not true. Mr. Speaker, I want to put on record of this Honorable House the statement that I made about St. Lucia being the worst prepared country for COVID. Mr. Speaker, I made the statement when St. Lucia had absolutely no quarantine facilities. The Prime Minister was speaking about quarantine at Rat Island. He was with a measuring tape at Rat Island measuring the buildings for quarantine. That's what he said. When I made the statement, there were no testing facilities in St. Lucia for COVID. When I made the statement. When I made the statement, Mr. Speaker, we, in this side of the House, we were urging the government to close the country. But because he had some Chinese friends coming over to St. Lucia for his horse racing, he allowed the country to be open. At the press conference, we made that statement and said to close the country because of COVID. But he left it open because he had his Chinese friends coming for horse racing. That is when I said the country was the worst prepared. When I said the country was the worst prepared.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Honorable Leader of the Opposition. He's standing on the point of order.
Mr. Speaker, the member is imputing improper motive. You cannot say about a member of the House, you cannot say that the Prime Minister left the country open because he had his Chinese friends coming. How does he prove that, Mr. Speaker? That is imputing improper motive, and then as a result, he should be asked to withdraw that statement, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member, Leader of the Opposition, I so agree that that statement is a very, I will not say it, but I think that that part that the Prime Minister left the country open because he had Chinese friends should be so withdrawn.
Because the Prime Minister did not leave the country open for his Chinese friends. But he kept the country open when we were urging him to close it. We held a press conference and we almost begged them, told them it was time to close the country because of COVID. The government did not do it. Since that time, Mr. Speaker, the opposition has supported the government in every aspect of its COVID response. We came in this Honorable House when they had the first state of emergency, and we said to them, although we have concerns about some of the provisions of the state of emergency, we are going to support it because we understand the danger of COVID. But they can't help themselves. The politics, Mr. Speaker, they can't help themselves. Every time they came with the state of emergency, we supported it. The Prime Minister was at a party in the Answer constituency without masks. Among people in a block when they were raising funds for somebody in the constituency of Answer, he had no mask. He was in Answer in a rum shop with no mask. I have never been in public without a mask because I wanted to set the example, Mr. Speaker. So when the Prime Minister comes and the members and pretend that this opposition did not support COVID, and we said it was the worst country prepared. When we said it, I was justified, and when I said it, it was to ensure that St. Lucia did what it had to do for the people of St. Lucia not to get affected more by COVID. So I make no apologies for it. I make absolutely no apologies for it, Mr. Speaker, because I was right at the time, because at that time, the government had absolutely no clue, because they were hoping and they were hoping that COVID would have disappeared. But, Mr. Speaker, coming back to this bill in this Honorable House, the government of Grenada, and when something is working properly, they take all the praise. When something is not, they blame everybody else. The government of Grenada had the same COVID control bill in July, 26th of July in Grenada. COVID control bill. I have a comparison between both acts, but I will not do it this evening. Government accepts responsibility for not ensuring that the public had the bill before attempting to take it to Parliament, and therefore commits to the process. And the government withdrew the bill for public consultation. All this government knew that the state of emergency would have ended in the 40th of September. They knew that. That wasn't news. That was a fact. When he came here to extend the state of emergency, it was until the 40th of September. They called 2 sittings of the House that they postponed for their own selfish reasons. They postponed it. They could have come before for these sittings and discuss it. Or they could have sent the first reading and discuss it on the 19th, the last Tuesday. For their own selfish reasons, they postponed it, Mr. Speaker, because this government believes they can do whatever they want. And that is why they believe, because they have the majority of votes in this parliament, they can do whatever they want. That parliament could have met last week. That bill could have been circulated early on and debated last week. No one will have any problems. They did not. They come this morning, and at 5 to 5, they table another bill at 5 to 5 and tell us that we must trust them. That's a government that has used state power for 4 years to go after one member of parliament. That's the same government. That's the same government, Mr. Speaker, that stood in this honorable house and said we have to cry because we are not members, because we do not support, because we are in opposition. That's a government, Mr. Speaker, that you cannot trust, Mr. Speaker, because that is a government that collectively and individually pinpoints people for victimization and vindictiveness. Mr. Speaker, this government, Mr. Speaker, they want us to come here and trust them. How can you trust a government that is passing a bill about COVID? Functions of the command center. There is not one representative from the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association, nor there is any representative from the opposition. And you talk about a national effort for COVID. Not one member from the Medical and Dental Association, Mr. Speaker. Not one member. You speak about consultation. The Bar Association, made up of lawyers in this country, has told you that there are provisions in this act that need to be looked into. You ignore them. The Hotel and Tourism Association, an association that you say, all the country depends on tourism, and you have a wonderful relationship with the Tourism Association, the SLHTA. They tell you, Mr. Speaker, I hope it's on the record that the Minister for Tourism has said that I paid the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association to write a letter. I want to put on the record of this parliament that the Minister of Tourism said that I paid the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association money to write a letter. That is the level that we've reached in this country. And you want me to trust a government like that? You hear what he's saying? And you think I can trust a government like that? Mr. Speaker, I did not pay them. I didn't pay them. The people will pay you when the time comes. Mr. Speaker, here is a government that speaks about consultation. But two of the main bodies of the country, including the opposition, tells you to hold back. You had the opportunity. You knew it was happening. You knew the 30th of September was the time. You allowed it to come to the 29th. And you want us to railroad yourself because, and you want us to sit and accept it because you say so? Mr. Speaker, you knew that on the 30th of September, the state of emergency would have ended. You could have done that a long time before. You could have circulated the bill early for discussion. It was nothing new. Everybody knew that COVID would not have ended on the 30th of September. No, that was no news. Why didn't you, if you had respect for the people of St. Lucia, and if you wanted to consult with the people of St. Lucia, you would have had this bill circulated because you knew it was ending on the 30th of September, but you did not. And you want us to sit and accept it because you say so. And you look for all kind of excuses about, I said it was the worst prepared, etc. Just because you do not want to admit that you made an error, and you should have circulated that bill a long time ago for discussion with the people of the country. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill, in section 66, before I go to section 66, in section 62, the government comes and speaks all the time about 361, 361, 361. The exact wording for 661 was a publication of false statements. And if there was not certain interventions, it would have passed. Because the intention was to pass it. That is why it's in the first copy of the bill. And at 5 to 5, you come with a different one. Mr. Speaker, regulations. The minister may, on the recommendations of the chief medical officer, make regulations to give effect to this act. Without limiting the variety of section 1, the minister can make regulations for the protocols under section 20, for the wearing of masks. So the regulations, Mr. Speaker, can change the bill. The regulations can change the bill. So they can do whatever changes they want there without coming back to this parliament. And he calls it a bill. Matter of correction, he says it's an act. It's a bill, not an act, Mr. Speaker. On the record, the Prime Minister says it's an act, it's a bill. So, Mr. Speaker, we believe that this government wants to push things down the throat of the people of St. Lucia and using the majority that they have in Parliament. And even if there is extensive concern by people not in any way closely related to the Labour Party, the Minister of Tourism can say that we paid them. That is how the Minister of Tourism, that's what he feels of the pioneers of tourism in St. Lucia. That's what he feels about them, that they can be paid to write a letter. That is the kind of respect. And he's talking about respect, and he's talking about tourism development. But the champions of tourism, the people who have invested the money in tourism, the people who are using, who you depend on tourism for, you say that they are so low, they can be paid to write a letter. Mr. Speaker, the opposition will support any measure to control COVID in the country. We were the first ones who began to speak about measures taken to protect COVID, Mr. Speaker. But the opposition cannot sit back and allow the government to do whatever they want. The government knew fully well that the state of emergency would have ended on the 30th of September. They knew fully well. That is not news, Mr. Speaker. That's not news. But because of the dictatorial attitude, because they believe that they have a right to do whatever they want to, Mr. Speaker, they have come at this last moment. They've abused their privileges by wanting to change the order, the order paper at the last moment. Again, using the majority abuse of this honorable House, Mr. Speaker, putting you in a position just because they have the power of the majority, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the government...
Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order. 35-5. Mr. Speaker, I've sat here and repeatedly heard the member for Castries East impute improper motive by suggesting that we have used our majority to abuse
As a dictatorship.
as a dictatorship, yes, and to abuse the privileges of the House. I mean, Mr. Speaker, that has been done repeatedly. I waited to see if you would have brought it to the attention of the member. That is out of order, according to Section 35.5.
Honourable Member, you may proceed, but best note had earlier ruled that you need to be careful if imputing improper motives or not.
The truth offends. Mr. Speaker, it is true that this government knew that the state of emergency would have ended on 30th of September. That's a fact. They knew that. And it's also true that they had ample time to prepare this bill and send for discussion to the public of St. Lucia. So to come here on the 29th of September is an abuse, Mr. Speaker, of the privilege of the majority, Mr. Speaker. And I stand by it. Mr. Speaker, I want to put on the record that the opposition would support any measure to control the spread of COVID, and the opposition would support any individual or groups of individuals involved in the front line in the protection of COVID. We will support them and we applaud the work they are doing. But we are warning that there was an article in The Economist that speaks to the abuse of power by governments because of the COVID crisis. There's an article which I can quote for you, Mr. Speaker, that speaks of the abuse of government. And we believe that this government, Mr. Speaker, in this act speaks about procurement. They speak about procurement, Mr. Speaker, and listen to what they say. Listen to what the bill says about procurement. It says, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker,
Honourable members,
I never went to any bloco without a mask, though. Mr. Speaker, here's what it said. You can do whatever you want, but the fact is the same. It speaks, Mr. Speaker, to procurement. Section 12. In the interest of protecting the public safety and public health, the minister may, after consultation with the minister responsible for finance, after consultation with the Minister of Finance, by order published in the Gazette, waive the application of any rules of law governing the procurement of goods and services. The Minister responsible for Finance shall every quarter lay a report before Parliament on expenditure, Mr. Every quarter. Why is that necessary when the Finance Act allows the Minister of Finance to give direct awards as they have been doing all the time? Why is that necessary, Mr. Speaker? Why is it necessary? Why is it necessary? Answer me, why is it necessary? Why is it necessary to have extra procurement powers? Why? Why? So, Mr. Speaker, that is typical of them. Anytime they can't answer, they laugh, they make it a joke, and they get up and they say all sorts of things. But they cannot deny the facts. The facts are they failed to consult the people of St. Lucia. They are disobeying the Bar Association, and they are disobeying the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association because the minister said, I paid them to write a letter. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.